All right, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott from Jeff Teaches Programming. We're in our C# string of lessons here, and even though I haven't put it out there yet, I have been working on showing you some fairly simplistic debugging stuff. All right, and let's go on and look at a few other things that are available to us here. All right. Now, the next thing I'd like to talk to you about are what are called watch windows. Watch windows let you monitor the values of a specific variable or a specific expression as you step through your code. All right, you can add variables and expressions to watch windows and basically have the debugger kind of show you what the heck is going on. Now this is useful because at least at times there's going to be a part of your code you're pretty sure you know why the code isn't working, but you're not sure exactly where it's happening, etc. So what you can do is you can monitor different values, all right, in real time and see exactly what's going on. All right. Now, what I want to show you too, I have some paperwork here, but what I want to show you is a couple of other things before we're going to go through an example. But first thing is, this is a great site, and that site is learn.microsoft.com. All right, and that basically is online help for just about anything you could think of. Okay, just so you know that. All right, learn.microsoft.com. Used to go by other names too. One of the things I found on here was watch variables with watch windows and a quick watch. Now look at the example that they give here, because I'm going to actually put this in. I'm going to comment out all the code I put in. I'm going to put this code in. I'm going to follow their steps here. All right. So let me start by going back to my program here and taking everything that we've done in here. We're going to comment all of it out. Don't worry if it gives us errors or anything. Don't worry about that. That's totally fine. All right, so that's all commented out. So in other words, program still works. It's just that now when you click calculate, nothing happens. Okay, clear still works, exit still works, but we've removed all the code that was in there. All right, I'm going to try their example here to see exactly what happens. All right, so I'm going to grab all of this code that's right here. We'll even include, well, we're not going to return anything, so we'll just leave it like that. I think this will work okay. All right, so let's come back in here. We'll come in here, and I'm just going to hit enter a couple times. I'm going to paste all that code in. Now, it won't get an error, but again, it's not printing anything. We are not telling it to print anything. That's not the idea behind this exercise. So we put the code in. It says set a breakpoint on the line that says C equals A plus B. So right here. Okay, so we'll do that first. And this breakpoint that we had, I'm going to delete. And I'm going to set one right there. All right, you know how to set breakpoints now because we've looked at this already. Pause for a second here so you don't have to hear my clock. All right, so that's the first thing we were asked to do, was to set a breakpoint on that line. Okay. Start debugging by selecting the green start arrow, or debug start debugging, or press F5. Okay, and the execution should stop when we get to that line. So let's see. Start the program. Click calculate. You can see it stops right there. That's good. All right. Now you can see here we've got what's called an autos window that shows us what we've got so far. A has got a value of 2. How do we know that? Because it started with 1, and A++ is the same thing. It is the same thing as adding 1 to A, so 1 plus 1 would give us 2. All right. B, which had a value of 2, B times equal 2 means it's the same thing as saying B equals B times 2. So 2 times 2 is 4. This line has not yet executed, so C is still 0. All right. So that's an autos window. It's it's a freebie, so to speak, that you get. But we're going to go on from there. Open a watch window by selecting Debug Windows Watch 1. Or you can do a Control-Alt-W1. I'm going to do it this way. So Debug Windows Watch 1. Debug Windows Watch 1. Okay, we've got that now. Okay. Whoops, not there. You can open additional watch windows 2, 3, and 4 if you want. In the watch window, select any empty row and type the variable A. Do the same for B and C. Okay? All right. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to type in A here. Then on the next line, I'm going to type in B. Then on the next line, I'm going to type in C. Now, so far, it doesn't look really different. It's the same thing we had with that autos window, except instead of saying autos, it now says watch. All right. Now, okay, it says, now continue debugging by selecting debug step into. And hopefully at least, you recall that when we did the step into, all right, when we did the step into, here it said, basically if the current line calls a function, it'll step into the function and debug it line by line. And what, again, you might say, well, what the heck does that mean? All right, I'm not going to hit F11. Your function key should work. Mine gets screwed up when I start the package I'm using to tape these lectures. So I'm going to do a debug step into. All right, notice C now has a value, 2 plus 4. That's good. All right, and I'm going to do another debug step into. Now it's adding 1 to I because it's supposed to do this 10 times. All right, fine. Another debug step into. All right. So you can see now this has changed. We added 1 more to A, so A is now 3. B, which was 4 times 2, is 8. All right, it hasn't executed this line yet, but it should say, when we get done, 3, all right, it's going to say 11. It says 6 right now, but it's going to say 3 plus 8, which is 11. So if I do another debug step into, now it does say 11. And it says 11 here. Why is this important? Because what this does allow us to do is if you've got a very complex program where you're changing the value of one or more variables at any time, all right, you can put these watch windows in and see exactly what's happening as you work your way through the program. All right. Now, I wanted to show you a couple more things regarding this. Okay. Oh, no, I'm stuck. Let's stop that. There we go. All right. And that is this. I just mentioned to you this, you can put expressions in there as well. So we could put in, literally type in anything we wanted to. All right. But learnmicrosoft.com, this is a great way to look at this stuff. All right. And explains it in much more depth and breadth of coverage than I just did. All right. I found that. As it says, you can inspect variables and return values. It's not my goal here to go through everything, but it's my goal here to get you started. All right. Now, I want to mention something else. Look on here. I typed in here, what is Visual Studio Hot Reload, which we'll talk about in a minute. All right. And what I want to show you, notice it comes up first, learn.microsoft.com. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. Okay. But then it says here, unable to hot reload and Stack Overflow. Stack Overflow, in a way. Now, this is me talking. You're not going to see, or you're not going to hear what I'm about to tell you. You're not going to read it probably any place or hear it possibly even from anybody else. But I look at least in a way, that Stack Overflow is kind of like Facebook for geeks. And what I mean by that is what you're able to do with it is if you've got questions about anything that you're working on a program or whatever, you can post them out there and have people answer. Now, that's the good news. The bad news is, the assumption is if you're going to post something out there that you've already tried to answer it yourself. All right, so in other words, if I posted out there that, hey, I tried running this program and I got this syntax error, if it's something I should be able to figure out with either a Google search or by myself, you don't put that on Stack Overflow. All right. You may remember the other day when I was going through one of my lectures that I was getting this error message when I tried to run the program. You may or may not even seen it. I don't know if I kept that video or not, but I went to debug it and I put in the exact error message that was coming out. And the first thing that came out was a Stack Overflow response. Somebody who had something similar. So this is a good place to go. If you get an error and you have no idea what it means, you can a lot of times just come in here and type in, Visual Studio error and then type in the entire error. Now, if it's got a path to your files and system, you don't put that in. But it's a great starting point. All right. A couple more things I wanted to mention here. Okay. When you debug, and you're really trying to make sure you're doing something. So let's say, for example, let's just assume here. All right. In fact, let's go back to the program that we had. There's absolutely nothing wrong with doing this. This is going to go through it 10 times. Start with 0 and go less than 10. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We could have said if it equaled 1 and less than or equal to 10. Okay, it would have given us the same result. The problem that people get sometimes is they get what's called an off by 1 error. I'm going to show you 2 ways that you can get that. If I did this and said less than 10, it would only go through 9 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. If I did this, now it's going to go through 11 times. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right? These are called edge cases. It happens when the extremes of your code's input is basically off. All right? Now, one thing, we had edge case testing before in the BMI program. Remember that the height had to be between 12 and 96. The weight had to be between 1 and 777. All right? Okay, a couple other things. It's pretty easy, unless you really scrutinize your own code, all right, to think that, hey, everything's working the way it should. All right. But when you assume, you've heard that old saying, what happens when you assume? All right. But you should always be skeptical of your code. Always. And if nothing else, have other people look at it. I know I was a programmer for many years, not that many, about 3.5, at AT&T Bell Laboratories in Naperville, Illinois. And when we would write something out, basically, what we'd have to do is we would have to go through a code inspection where other people would look at your code. And the idea was, if they found errors in your code, believe it or not, it was a good thing. All right, this is back in the days of rotary phones and in a way I'm dating myself, but this was really back in the 80s. Okay? And at that time, what would happen was, you pick up a phone and you'd get dial tone, which most people don't even know today what that is. All right? But I wouldn't have wanted to put code out there that I thought worked, but didn't, and give it to a phone company where it would break. All right? You just don't want to see stuff like that happening. It's a good way to lose your job. All right. Now, we haven't seen these yet, but sometimes what you see in this area here, in this output area, are not just errors, but they're warnings. All right. I remember this directly. One of my first jobs when I was at AT&T is my boss had said, I want you to take this section of code that's here and I want you to fix it. It's not working as it should. I said, are there errors in it? He said, yeah, there are, but they're logic errors. All right. They said, we want you to fix it and have it do this. I fixed it. I had it do this. But I noticed when I ran it, I got scores of warnings in this file that was there. There must have been 100 warnings. And I said, do you want me to fix these warnings? And he said, no, I want you to just go on. Well, the bad thing about warnings is if you ignore them, they can lead to other problems down the road. So take warnings seriously. I mean, I can't think of any other way to say it other than that. And hopefully that makes sense. All right. Okay. Now, let's put an error in here and talk about how we could fix it. All right. So you've seen that up here. Now let's take this and let's comment this out as well. All right. So this is, we'll just call this example number 1. And this next one here, this right here, will be example number 2. Now let's put in another example, okay? So this will be example number 3. All right, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say, the first thing I put in here is not going to give an error, but then I'm going to introduce an error. So I'm going to say string first name equals, and we're going to have double quote. Okay? Now I'm going to say, if string, no, not string, if name dot, if first name dot length is greater than 0, okay, so if it's greater than 0, come on. If first name dot length is greater than 0, we'll get it. We'll just do, I don't know, we'll do a message box. And it's going to say dot show name was entered. Okay. And for the heading, we'll put name OK. And we'll put in a message box.OK and a message box.information. Okay? All right, so let's run this. Again, no error, but when I click calculate, okay, notice now, because I comment all that stuff out, I'm getting the name does not exist. So let's get rid of that watch window. All right, now that, technically at least, even though it didn't print anything, it worked. And what I mean is, I didn't get an error. Now, another thing you can do, instead of setting it to the empty string, which is nothing, is I can set this equal to null. And null, for lack of better words, means unknown. Let me run this again. And now let me click calculate. And notice what I get. I get what's called a null reference exception. All right? And you might say, well, then just make this double quote, and it'll work. Yeah, but if you are maintaining someone else's code and made it been set to null, so how do we get around this? How do you fix that? All right, I've got a first name.length is greater than 0. All right, well, I can also come in here and say if first name not equal to null and first name.length greater than 0. Now, you don't have to do this, but I like to, because there's two separate conditions in here, I like to put parens around each condition. That's the way I do things. You don't have to do that. It'll work fine if you don't. All right, I'm going to put in here else, and we'll put the same thing in here, but I'm going to say no name entered. No name was entered. And we'll say here no name. All right. Now, what I want to show you in here, what I'm going to try to show you at least, okay, is let's do it this way. Let's stop the program. In fact, under debug, we'll just stop debugging and run the program again. Okay. Now notice that if I click calculate, I get the message box that says no name was entered. All right. So a way that you can work with that, and again, was this a great example? No, but it's how you can make sure if you're getting exceptions, you can work your way around it. And that, at least I think, is pretty important. All right. Now, one last thing, quickly, and you may have seen this already. You may have had this happen to you if you've been writing my programs or your own. But let's make one more example here. So I'm going to take this. And I'm going to comment it out. All right, we're going to make one more example here. This will be example number 4. And I'm going to say int I equals 1 while I is less than or equal to 10. Message box dot show, and we'll say I equals plus I dot to string, and we'll say here current value of I, and we'll say message box buttons.ok, and we'll say that this is message box dot information. icon.information. Okay. Now, hopefully you've already noticed what the problem is. I is never changing. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to stop the run. And I'm going to come in here and start the run. All right, so I'm going to start the run right now. Let's get rid of this breakpoint. We don't need it. And I'm running the program. Notice these are all runtime errors that I'm introducing because the program comes up. It's not until I click calculate. So I is 1, 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 because I'm never changing the value. All right. Let's see. Well, I can't, this isn't a good example for that, but I'll go back to one. So if I go back here and just change this, that after I put this in, I say I++. Notice it even wants me to put that in. Now notice the difference. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, the program is still running right now. What if I wanted to change this and I didn't want it to go to 10? I just want it to go to 5. So I'm going to change this from 10 to 5. All right. Now, I don't know if this is going to work or not, but we're going to try it at least. This button right here under Help is called a hot reload button. So I'm going to click that button. All right. Now, what did it do? Well, let me see if I can show you. Calculate. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What hot reload does, and it's a fairly new concept in here, but what that does is it allows you to make changes in your code. You can't always change everything, but you can change a lot of what's in there while it's running. All right? And you don't have to stop the code and then start it up again. Some people like it, some people don't. So let's kind of review what we talked about. I mean, you need to understand debugging. And you only become a master at debugging by doing it. All right? It's going to improve the quality of your code. All right? It's going to improve your productivity. Okay? We looked at breakpoints, which again will pause execution at the line where you set it on it. You can set more than one if you want to. We talked about step into, which allows you basically, for lack of better words, to kind of jump into the method that's being called. Step over, which executes the method without stepping inside of it. And step out, which exits the current method and returns back to whatever called it. We talked about watch windows, all right, that they can monitor either variables or expressions while you're running the program. Okay, there's a lot more that you can see on this. And I was going to see, I'm going to exit here, and I don't even know where I am here. Okay, I'm still around 30 minutes. So let me quickly just end this by saying this. I'm going to get rid of all these, but I'm going to say, I'm going to try to put in here, I'm just typing in here, debugging a C# program. All right. Now, notice there's a whole tutorial on debugging. I did not use this one. Why? Because much of the stuff that's in here talks about things like arrays and some other stuff. But it's a great place to start. Notice they want you to create a project. They give you the code for the application. It's a console app. They have you start the debugger. They show you what it should say. They have you set a breakpoint. All right. They talk about these data tips, which basically allows you to inspect the variable by taking your mouse and putting it over it. We kind of did that anyway. All right. They give you a step into example. They give you a step out example. All right. there's a thing called run to click. And if you do that, all right, you can basically tell it to stop at a certain line in your program. So just run up until that point. All right, there's the auto window, there's locals, and the difference between local and watch is local is designed to be run and show stuff just for a specific method or function that you're writing, where the watch window that we looked at is program wide. All right, and there's more stuff in here as well, and they even give you, overview of the debugger, debugging code for absolute beginners. Maybe I should have went to that one. I didn't even look at that one, to be honest with you. All right, again, they've got a sample app in here. Some of this stuff that they put in here might make sense. Some of it we have not gone over yet. All right, but that was just meant to be an introduction in these 2 videos to debugging. So when I come back again, and for my own edification, what I'm going to do is I'm going to comment this out as well. So now everything is commented out under the calculate button. So let me do a file, save all. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do here, and it may or may not be a good thing or the right thing or whatever, but what I'm going to do here is I'm going to have what I'm going to call the fourth iteration. No, I'm wrong. We're going to call it the first iteration of the payroll program. And we're going to do this first as a console app. Then we'll come back and we will do it as a GUI app. Okay, so that's what you have to look forward to next. In fact, let's just come in here. I like to do this to get us started. And I'm going to say add new project. I know I can just click right here. And I'm going to say payroll app. In fact, we'll do it like this. First iteration. We'll call it just pay console. Okay, and we'll click create. So I'm going to pick it up from there in the next lecture. So I'll see you then.